I'm JP Wexström, the Chief Executive of Helen. The energy sector is transforming. In our series, we open new avenues to the energy future with leading experts. Join us and learn how the new era of energy will change our everyday lives. In this episode, we are supercharging the future, and we have here the Chief Executive of Venture, Sami Lampinen, and Head of Helen Ventures, Terhi Vapola. Welcome.
Thank you.
Sami, what would you say are the 3 or 4 most important things that a venture capitalist looks currently in the energy sector?
Well, I believe if you look at overall any startup, it's all about the management team and the entrepreneurial spirit. We are always investing in teams. We are giving them the fuel or the energy to take and revolutionizing their business. So I believe the management team is certainly, and the entrepreneurial drive is the number thing, which is of course beyond any sector. But I believe specifically in the energy sector, it's all about the impact. If it's the reduction or is it the top line growth. So we are seeing very simple mechanisms how there's an impactful angle to the investment, or if there's an ability to fast generate additional revenue to the existing players. Finally, on the energy sector, which is probably not the most typical and the most obvious sector where venture capitalists work, is the value chain. We have to kind of look above and from a higher level of current very infrastructure and I would say systems driven businesses. So we have to kind of step higher level and look at how we can revolutionize existing value chains, which of course is not that easy, but certainly a huge opportunity.
Okay. Terhi, you run Helen Ventures, which is a corporate venture capital arm of an energy company. How does that differ from venture capitalists that Sami represents? Is it very different or is it actually very similar?
I would say in one way it's very similar. So the same rules apply, the same methods apply, and same way of looking at the companies apply. But then on the other hand, you can bring something more. So looking at the industry and sector insights and being able to know the players and get the network, so you can support the teams from that angle. So either directly from the inside or out of the networks in the industry. And how to maneuver in the industry is very important, especially in the energy sector. So being a traditional sector, you need to be able to know how and what can be changed, what cannot be changed, and how do you make that to happen. So from that sense, bringing the insights, bringing the know-how, opening the doors, and at the end, of course, you could also work as a venture client or pilot the opportunities, get the access to the customer base and the data. So from those angles.
Okay. How many deals are you going to make during the next, let's say, couple of years? Because it gives an idea of the magnitude and what you're going to do with the companies. I mean, you're going to merge them or sell them later with an increased valuation, or I mean, what do you think about this?
For that question, I address it very similarly to any of the VCs. So if you look at the 50 million, which we are addressing in the startup space in terms of investing in the startups. So we build a portfolio with very similar logic as any of the other VCs. We bring the know-how, we bring the insights in there, but the companies are not the subsidiaries of the corporation, but they are independent companies. They make their own decisions and they have their own drive. So that's very important to make sure that when you look at the deal, you go in there to support them. And the company itself decides what's the right way. So that's what we are looking for. And typically, of course, if you look at the venture capital area, you would either look at the trade sale or you would look at the IPO. So these would be the typical ways of where do you want to grow the company and how to grow it.
Okay. Are you planning or are you ready to fail also if you are addressing several companies and investing funds? I mean, are you ready to failures too?
Absolutely. I think that anybody who does the early phase investments, we play in the world which is highly uncertain. So we are betting on looking at the trends which are happening in the industry, the vision which is not there today, so that you can make a fundamental change into the industry. So it is expected that every single deal you look at the case which has the potential to change what they are doing, change the world. But at the same time, we know how difficult that is. So even though you select the top few, you look at a huge number of deals, you channel it down into very few which you do in the year. And yet still the timeline of looking at 5 to 10 years ahead, things might happen. So you need to accept the fact that that's part of the innovation process.
Part of the game, yes.
Part of the game.
Sami, when you look at the whole venture capital industry and energy sector, there are obviously many places in the value chain startups might position themselves, like infrastructure, the basic products and services and applications and digital solutions. I mean, what would you say, which part of the value chain in the energy sector is the most lucrative, most interesting at the moment for investors? Is it the infrastructure or is it the application layer?
If we look at the startups, and I would say investments that are typically in some millions, that necessarily don't really play any role in the infrastructure.
Yes.
So I would say closer to consumer and being even addressing a global consumer potential. So that means basically in your app or in your phone or
yes.
around your wrist or,
yes.
or assessing from your browser your different kind of energy consumption behavior. That can be global, but that can be very local. So I would guess that going into the energy sector, at least what we see and we get most excited, they actually are from a consumer side, or they get very close to a business consumer, then making the changes that actually are then affecting the energy decision.
Okay. The energy companies or utilities are typically regarded as rather conservative companies, and the products are some people say very dull and simple products. I mean, are there any like silver bullets, what you would say that would really make the difference in the companies you're looking at in the energy sector, that would kind of change the rules of the game in the energy sector, that would make the difference and make the big impact, so that the whole kind of dull utility would change?
Yeah, it's probably not dull, but it's of course regulated.
Yes.
Which and of course, and it's having those kinds of roles in the society that you just don't change
yes.
overnight. I believe in some of the deals where we have done and we have entered, let's say, utility sector or utilities as customers, I believe one of the, if not the silver bullet, at least one of the big enablers of success is building an as open ecosystem as possible. So you can have competing energy companies, you can have several utilities, you can have several corporations or integrators or software players in that ecosystem, and that can actually be initiated and built by a startup. And you get amazed when you suddenly have top tier names from a global perspective kind of contributing into that ecosystem. That ecosystem may not yet be a big business for the startup, but that is the way to start getting your message through, building industry awareness and getting a momentum play in that ecosystem, which means that if these guys are buying into that technology, why don't you guys buy as well? And that becomes a reference stack, which is then taken further.
Yes, yes. Terhi, you represent Helen Ventures, which is a CVC arm of Helen Corporation. What do you actually invest in? Can you reveal the investment strategy?
We at Helen Ventures, so we invest in changing and transforming the energy sector. So we look at clean tech, clean energy production, capability to manage the networks where you have multiple sources and different clean sources coming in. We look at the energy efficiency, also very importantly, looking at the electrification of the transport sector, so e-mobility space. circular economy as it links into the energy sector. And underlying all of this is all things digital. So how do you apply the digital technologies like drones, like AI, big data analytics into this sector to actually drive the transformation in the market?
What about decarbonization and using renewables? Because these are the two very popular themes. I mean, can you do anything to put these things forward?
In terms of investments, so going into which kind of a role you play and where you want to play. So of course we have a lot of tech which actually can bring you the clean energy. Quite often they are capital heavy, so it goes into the areas of larger investments. I especially like the areas where you use the digital, like AI or drones, or looking at these capabilities of bringing the digital elements into the mix so that you can utilize it better, you can optimize it better, and that's for me a very interesting area.
Interesting. Has it been very difficult to get people to Helen Ventures and build a team within a utility? Because the cultures are very different. You have a startup culture, and the rest of the company is a big corporation.
I think this is an area where you can actually make a difference, and it's an area which is ripe for transformation. So it kind of invites people who are interested in this kind of topics. And what I wanted to do is build a team where we have the energy sector know-how, we have the digital sector ICT know-how, we have the venture fund experience, doing the transactions, doing the deals, not only in the early phase, but also in the growth phase, and then also the M&A. And building this kind of a package where you could say, where you can kind of help the startups from the different angles has been my goal, and I'm really, really pleased with the team what we have.
Okay. We all operate primarily in Finland, and Finland is a country with a lot of talented people and nice startups. How do you see the potential of the Finland-based companies globally in venture capital industry?
It's becoming better and better all the time, and I would say that even from a European perspective, we are clearly in the top 3 position already. Of course, London is always a big one because of so much talent and also money, and Stockholm, Berlin, good ones as well. But clearly we have had tremendous successes over the past couple of years. So we are clearly one of the target areas, or at least we can really be even quite a bit bigger in terms of that venture system and also entrepreneurial system, and that is basically then building on the foundation of having superior education and a lot of research and a lot of talented know-how in the ecosystem, starting from the universities and corporations and R&D efforts.
Do you think that the current corona crisis, has affected the industry, the venture capital industry, and the funding and the creation of new startups?
Yes, every individual who is following the corona situation and how the world is changing, I believe we all have become more conscious of environment, the use of energy, and also the kind of impact and sustainable investing. So in that sense, a lot of those elements are becoming more valid than 2 or 3 years ago. But then specifically on your question whether funding has been dried out or is drying out in the months to come, I don't really see that happening. Deal making is becoming slightly more time-taking exercise because we don't get to meet the teams face to face, but on the other hand we are then using all the tools available to get the references and really trying to get under the skin of an entrepreneur in other ways that we did before. So that's the kind of way how venture capitalists really are making investment decisions every day.
The whole world and Europe is going through a very difficult time because of the virus. I mean, what would you say is the number one or the most important things that a relatively small but fast-growing VCs would need? What is the advice, your advice to these companies?
It's the drive. The venture capitalists typically look for companies that are going through the cycles. Some of the biggest successful technology giants, they were born after the dot-com era, or they were born in the middle of the Lehman Brothers crisis. And if there's a need that is added with the drive, that is the recipe for success. And that the need may still be vague, it may be unexistent at the moment, but it will come if there's enough drive and belief. So that's the single most characteristics in an entrepreneurial stack what we really want to encourage.
Interesting. Do you agree, Terhi? You represent slightly different organization. Is it really the drive or is it something else?
I think the team always is the most important, but you need to choose where you use your efforts and drive into. So you're also looking at the size of the market. So I'm a believer of the market as well. So being smart and being able to spot the opportunities in the changing environment. So that you find the market which is big enough, as growing fast and is scalable is also very important. Of course, you need to then, of course, a third one is to have a product which actually is solving a fundamental problem. So that is so important that people are willing to pay for it. Of course, in order to succeed in any of the big markets, you need the best team. So the team drive, the visionary and the execution capabilities, they are all what makes it happen. Because at the moment, if you think about the startups, it's all about the promise. So it's something else which the small team could do. But what they have at that stage is, of course, just a minute little detail on what they are building, and that, of course, takes exceptional people to make it happen.
Thank you. This is very interesting indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.